So about a year ago, I had the opportunity to work with Hasselblad showcasing their X2D2. I've always been intrigued with Hasselblad cameras ever since I took photography for A-level in high school back in England, and my teacher at the time constantly talked about Hasselblad cameras, and that obsession has continued to grow. We fast forward to a couple of weeks ago. This showed up on my doorstep, and once again, I'm going to be working with Hasselblad showcasing the X2D2 alongside their new 35-100 f2.8 to f4 lens. So naturally, the first order of business once this camera arrived was to grab the family, pack up the truck, and head to the desert.
So by full disclosure, this video is sponsored by Hasselblad, but they don't tell me what I have to say, and these are fully my own words and thoughts based on my real-world experiences using this camera. And as always, I'm going to be as unbiased as I can be, showcasing both the good and the bad with the X2D2.
So I had the predecessor, the X2D, last year, and I loved that camera. Quality was absolutely incredible. 100 megapixels, medium format. It really doesn't get any better than that. But there were a lot of problems with that camera that prevented me from having an enjoyable experience. And I talk about this time and time again in my videos. Cameras are so good these days. It comes down to the experience first and foremost. Yes, there are some subtle quality differences, but the experience, in my opinion, is what matters the most. If you have a camera that hinders you when you're making photos, then you're going to be less inspired and less motivated to get out. But for myself, the X2D2 has pretty much fixed all of those issues that I had with its predecessor. So throughout this video, I'm going to be showing you photos that I took down in the desert with my family. We packed up my Ram and my Toon camper and just spent a couple of days just roaming around Canyonlands throughout Moab in southern Utah, making photos with the Hasselblad X2D2. So one great thing that Hasselblad did is obviously they dropped the price of the X2D to I think around $5,000. But these aren't cheap cameras. They're not an impulse buy. They are an investment. But the thing with Hasselblad is they don't skip corners with their build quality. Absolutely top of the line. They really spare no expense with their build quality. But to kind of put things into perspective, the X2D2 is currently around $7,400. For some kind of market comparisons, the Leica Q3 is around $7,000. But that's the full frame. And the X2D2 has this gorgeous 100 megapixel medium format sensor that is just absolutely incredible. Now, notably, the biggest improvement with the successor to the X2D is its autofocus. Medium format cameras have never been known to have good and accurate autofocus. They're large sensors, there's a lot of stuff going on behind that sensor, and it's just generally more expensive to create reliable and quick and snappy autofocus with these very large and heavy-duty cameras. But what Hasselblad have done with the X2D2 is they have implemented LiDAR to improve that autofocus. And let me tell you, they have crushed it. This tracks on to my 4-year-old son running around the desert, and I've watched that little autofocus box just lock onto him. No matter how quick he's running or twisting and turning, it's been absolutely incredible. But for myself, that wasn't the biggest improvement. For a lot of people it was, but what made the biggest difference to me and made me enjoy using this camera way more than its predecessor is this right here, just a simple joystick. The X2D did not have a joystick, and this has made shooting way more enjoyable. It's just how I shoot. I use the joystick for everything, navigating the menus, but more importantly, changing the autofocus point. Now on the X2D original, you could use the touchscreen, whatever, it just wasn't clicking for me. So now I can just change my autofocus point on the fly, and there's a lot more customizability with the X2D2, which, going over some other improvements, the X2D had a tilt-out screen, but the X2D2 screen takes it one step further, and you pretty much get, well, you get exactly horizontal. So it makes kind of low down shooting a lot more easier. Before, it kind of, on the predecessor, the screen kind of tapped out around about here. But this, I don't know, it's just a small thing that makes shooting a lot more enjoyable. Now, it is the same sensor as its predecessor, but Hasselblad have made some improvements to that sensor and the technology behind it. So we still have the 16-bit color definition, but now we have up to 15.3 stops of dynamic range. The X2D was the best sensor that I've ever used. I could literally in Lightroom pull my highlights all the way down to -100, push my shadows all the way up to +100, and it looks like and I still get incredibly clean results. The dynamic range of that blew me away, and the X2D2 has just taken it one step further. So if you are shooting in, high dynamic range scenes, this camera is not going to skip a beat. Alongside dynamic range improvements, Hasselblad have vastly improved the image stabilization. The X2D one was fantastic at I think around like 7.5 stops of image stabilization. The X2D2 has taken it to 10 stops. And I have pretty steady hands, but you can take a long exposure handheld, literally like a couple of seconds, and it's going to be crispy sharp thanks to that 10 stops of image stabilization. Also made some minor improvements to the screen. It's the same size and I think the same contrast ratio, but it now goes to a peak brightness of 1400 nits, which is absolutely insane. I forgot to mention one thing when I talked about autofocus, but on the X2D2, we now have subject tracking, such as people, animals, and vehicles. Now, I love vehicle tracking because I'm quite often having my wife drive one of the vehicles. So here are a couple of photos where she was driving the truck down in Moab. The vehicle autofocus tracking had zero problems staying locked on. Even on a black truck in a dark situation, it nailed that autofocus tracking. Now, this isn't an in-depth review. I don't really like doing this kind of setting. I like being more out in the field, but I wanted to kind of give my initial experience after using the camera on one single trip. I do have more coming, and I'm going to be using the X2D2 as my primary camera for the next few months, obviously. So stay tuned for kind of some more thoughts and impressions on this as, the months go by. But that's enough about the camera. I want to talk about this lens. Now, this lens is absolutely enormous, but as to be expected with such a large sensor kind of profile, you need to have some big glass as well. And obviously, it's quite a versatile lens. It's about a 28 to 70-ish full frame equivalent. Medium format, it's f2.8 to f4, which I think is like 2.1 or 2.2 to like 3.5 or something. So it's incredibly versatile. This is it at the 35 point, but then we go to 100. It doesn't extend too much. I would say it's about the equivalent size of the Sony 28 to 70 f2G Master. But this lens has been a ton of fun. When I had the X2D, I had the 38V, and there was a lot of things that I did not like about this lens. And the 35 to 100, they've definitely made some improvements. There's less vignetting. It's incredibly clean, but it also retains some really nice contrast and subject separation, even shooting at f4, which is obviously equivalent to like 3.5. So this has just been a really nice lens to use, and I honestly don't think I'm going to be using a different lens on this because I like having flexibility. For the most part, I use a Q3, which is obviously fixed 28. So going to a zoom lens is a little bit of a breath of fresh air because it's been a couple of years since I've used a zoom lens in my photography work. So that's pretty much it for this video. As I mentioned, it's kind of just my initial thoughts, first experience with this camera. Definitely stay tuned for more to come. And if you have any specific burning questions that you want to know about the X2D2, then drop a comment down below or message me on Instagram. I'll do my best to address them in videos to come. Hopefully this has been beneficial for you. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next video.